What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my fantasy football starts and sits for NFL Week 5.
Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over each position and give you my fantasy football starts and sits for NFL this week. This should help you decide who you want to start in your season-long fantasy football leagues. And we will show you how to use the Draft Dashboard tools to dominate your season-long fantasy leagues. You can find waiver wire targets, get player point projections, find the best positional matchups. We also post a cheat sheet with the top 10 fantasy football players to start for each position, and we have the best and worst wide receiver cornerback matchups posted as well. We have it all right here, so let's get into it. Okay guys, NFL Week 5, let's take a look at the quarterback position. At the quarterback position, I'm gonna start Sam Darnold from the Carolina Panthers playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing quarterbacks. Sam Darnold has averaged 24.4 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5 rush attempts per game. He scored 34 fantasy points last game, had 6 rush attempts. Now, he's projected at 18.7 fantasy points here in Week 5, but I think he can score over 20 fantasy points, and he's 7,600 FanDuel salary and 1,000 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 44.5 points scored in this game, with the Panthers favored by 4. So with Christian McCaffrey out, Sam Darnold has to pass the ball more, and he's mobile quarterback. He can get a rushing touchdown, so he gives you a rushing floor, and he's been playing great this season, scoring 20, 25, and 34 fantasy points in his last 3 games. You can't argue with averaging 24.4 fantasy points per game after 4 games. That's pretty good. He wasn't a very good quarterback with the Jets, but it looks like he's found a home in Carolina. So I'm going to start Sam Darnold here versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, what quarterback are we going to sit in Week 5? I'm going to sit Baker Mayfield from the Cleveland Browns playing the LA Chargers, who have a good defense overall, and they give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield has only averaged 14.6 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.8 rush attempts per game. He's projected at 18 fantasy points here in Week 5. He's 6,800 FanDuel salary, 1,300 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 49.5 points scored in this game, with the Browns trailing by 1. So I just think that there's better options at the quarterback position. Baker Mayfield has yet to score 20 fantasy points or more, and he only scored 9 fantasy points last week. I just don't see a lot of upside with Baker Mayfield, especially in a tough matchup versus the Chargers. He can throw an interception or 2 and really hurt his fantasy production. So I'm going to sit Baker Mayfield here versus the LA Chargers.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. Who are we going to start in Week 5? I'm going to start Leonard Fournette from the Tampa Bay Bucks playing the Miami Dolphins, who have the 10th worst defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Leonard Fournette He's only averaged 9.6 fantasy points per game on the season, but he's getting 11 rush attempts per game and 4.8 pass targets per game, so about 15, 16 touches per game, and he scored 15 fantasy points last week off of 20 rush attempts and 5 pass targets, so that's a ton of volume. He's on the field for 58% of the snaps, but he touches the ball 39% of that time. He's projected at 11 fantasy points here in week 5. I think he can score closer to that 15 fantasy point mark, and he's $6,400 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,200 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 48 points scored in this game, and they have the Bucs favored by 10.5. So this could turn into a running game script if the Bucs get the lead. I think Tom Brady's going to come out and throw a 2 or 3 early touchdowns, bouncing back from that poor performance in New England last week. So I think Leonard Fournette is going to get plenty of opportunity to run this ball throughout the end of the game. So it should be a running game script for the Bucs. So I'm going to start Leonard Fournette here versus the Miami Dolphins. Okay, who are we going to sit in week 5? I'm going to sit Miles Sanders from the Philadelphia Eagles playing the Carolina Panthers, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing running backs. And Miles Sanders, he's just been awful so far this year, only scoring an average of 8.7 fantasy points per game, getting 9.3 rush attempts per game, and 3.5 pass targets per game. So not a lot of volume, not a lot of production. He's on the field for 64% of the snaps. He's projected at 12.7 fantasy points here in week 5, and that projection might even be a little high. And he's $5,900 FanDuel salary, $200 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 44.5 points scored in this game, with the Eagles trailing by 4. So it's a bad matchup, a low-scoring game. Hasn't done much at all this season, so I'm going to leave him on the bench. So I'm going to sit Miles Sanders here versus the Carolina Panthers. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. Who are we going to start at the wide receiver position? I'm going to start Kenny Golladay from the New York Giants playing the Dallas Cowboys, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. They give up the second most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. And Kenny Golladay, he's averaged 9.2 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.5 pass targets per game. But he was a little banged up to start the season, and he scored 15 fantasy points last week off of 7 pass targets. And he's on the field for 82% of the snaps. He's projected at 11 fantasy points here in week 5. He's $6,200 FanDuel salary and $300 less on DraftKings. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 51.5 points scored in this game, with the Giants trailing by 7. So you got a high-scoring game, a passing game script, and a great matchup. And the Giants have a couple of injured wide receivers, so they're going to funnel the ball to Kenny Golladay. So I'm going to start Kenny Golladay here versus the Dallas Cowboys.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL, MLB is still going, NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, who are we going to sit in week 5 at the wide receiver position? I'm going to sit Juju Smith-Schuster from the Pittsburgh Steelers playing the Denver Broncos, who have a good defense overall. They're middle of the pack defending opposing wide receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster, he's only averaged 6.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.8 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 77% of the snaps. He's projected at 10.6 fantasy points here in week 5. He's $5,900 FanDuel salary and $900 less on DraftKings. Now, Vegas thinks there's going to be 40.5 points scored in this game, with the Steelers favored by 1.5. So, not a great matchup here, and a low-scoring game. And the thing that concerns me about Juju Smith-Schuster is he had a fantastic cornerback matchup last week, and he only produced 2 fantasy points off of 8 pass targets. So that's concerning moving forward. I'm going to have to put him on my bench until we see something from Juju Smith-Schuster. So I'm going to sit Juju Smith-Schuster here versus the Denver Broncos. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. I'm going to start Dalton Schultz from the Dallas Cowboys playing the New York Giants, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Dalton Schultz has averaged 12 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.8 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 72% of the snaps, projected at 7.4 fantasy points here in week 5, although I think he can score 10 fantasy points or more in this one. He's $6,200 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,800 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 51.5 points scored in this game, with the Cowboys favored by 7. So high-scoring game, great matchup. The last 2 weeks, he had 8 and 7 pass targets and scored 15 and 23 fantasy points. So I'm going to start Dalton Schultz here versus the New York Giants. Okay, who are we going to sit at the tight end position? I'm going to sit Austin Hooper from the Cleveland Browns playing the LA Chargers, who have a good defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing tight ends. Austin Hooper, he's only averaged 5.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 4 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 66% of the snaps, touching the ball 9% of that time. He's projected at 6.8 fantasy points here in week 5. He's $4,900 FanDuel salary and $1,700 less on DraftKings. Vegas thinks there's going to be 49.5 points scored in this game, with the Browns trailing by 1. So if I'm going to sit Baker Mayfield, I'm definitely going to sit Austin Hooper. Not enough production. There's plenty of other options at the tight end position with more opportunity. So I'm going to sit Austin Hooper here versus the LA Chargers.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.